We're going to take a couple minutes and run through our Monogram sign project. And this one is updated a little bit so that it works a little better for the laser. So first thing we're going to do is use the command text object. And we're going to select a big letter that we want to be the background for our sign. We're going to set a height of 12 inches. Go ahead and pick the font that you like. Sometimes it works better if we make it bold so that it's bigger, but you don't have to. You can try italics as well. We want to make sure we have curves selected and group output, and everything else down here should not be selected. So hit OK, and we're going to go ahead and just put that in the middle of the screen somewhere. Next step is to do the text that's going to go across it. We're going to do text object again. We'll do, so alligator is the word that we're going to do. This time I'm not going to have it be bold. But one thing to note is if we have letters that hang down below the line, so G, Y, P, Q, letters like that, it's probably going to be easier if we do it in all caps. So I'm going to do that in all caps. I'm going to set my text height at 1.5 inches. Again, curves, group output, that should be default from last time. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to put that approximately in the middle of my sign. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to get these aligned. So I'm going to highlight them, use the align command, and I'm going to click concentric in the command line so that, and hit enter, so that it aligns it side to side and up and down. Now we can adjust those a little bit based on what we need to do and what we think looks good. And in the case of this one, I'm actually going to bring this down a little bit because it extends up into the center portion of the A. I'm going to bring it down so that it runs basically across there, across that bar. Next thing, I'm going to do bounding box, so that it puts a box just around this text. Now I'm going to need to zoom in and make sure that my text overlaps that so we can trim it out. In this case, it doesn't, so I'm going to temporarily select and hide the text so that all I have is just the box. I'm going to turn on center for OSnap. I'm going to click on that bounding box, type scale, and I'm going to snap to the center of it, and I'm just going to try making it 95%. So we'll make it slightly smaller. I'll do show so that I can bring that back up. Now I can see everything overlaps. But if we notice on the outside here, my R and my A hang over a little bit. So I'm going to make sure I have gumball on. I'm going to click on the box, and I'm just going to use the scale on gumball here to extend it out a little bit beyond. Typically, we want a little bit of space on the outside here. Next, I'm going to offset this. So offset, and I'm going to offset it 1/4 inch outward so that I have a frame around the text. Okay? So I've made my big letter. I've added my text in here. I've done a box so that it overlaps. I've done an outside so that I have a frame. And next thing that I need to do is start doing some trimming. So when we do that, there's kind of a process to it that I think gives us a greater chance of success. So I'm going to highlight all this. I'm going to type trim. And the first thing that I'm going to do is trim out any of these vertical lines from my big letter. So I'll do that. Make sure we get all these little guys in here too. Otherwise that creates an issue for us. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Same thing over here. There's a little one there I want to make sure I get. Okay, so I've gone and I've trimmed out the vertical lines. Now I realize those were diagonal, but they're up and down. Next thing I'm going to do is trim out anything that makes this part flow into this part. Because remember, the laser, or whatever we're cutting this on, will cut any line that it sees. So we'll get rid of that one, that one, that one, and that one. Okay? Lastly, I need to go through and trim out anywhere that the text overlaps this bounding box. And this is one where I'm probably going to want to zoom in and pan a little bit so I can move around, make sure I get all the lines that I want. So basically what we need is this and this need to be one continuous part. So we'll get all of these. And this part can get a little tedious and takes a little while. So keep trimming here. You notice there I had two little lines that extended. I want to make sure we get those. And we're getting there. Okay, so I've trimmed all those out. I'm going to hit Enter to end the trim command. With everything still highlighted, I'm going to type join. Now I want to pay attention to my command line and make sure that it says into closed curves. If it says into closed curves and X number of open curves, then I'm going to have to go through and find those open curves and figure out what I need to do to deal with those. A couple things just design-wise that we might decide we want to do. So right here, we've got this long section for the L that I think we probably want to have a line that goes in here so that it creates some delineation so we can still see that. I'm going to copy that one to the next L, copy from this point to that point so that they're all the same. And then I'm probably going to want to do something similar up here above the T. Go. Okay, so when that cuts, what that'll do is make sure that we can see that there was actually a separate letter there. Now, last thing I want to do, I want to highlight this, and I'm going to hatch it, so use the hatch command. And we'll hit OK. And one, we want to make sure that it successfully hatches. If it doesn't, if we get an error message about self-intersecting curves or open curves, then we need to find and deal with those. But the next thing that we want to do is we want to click on the hatch and we're going to delete it. And we want to make sure that all of the hatch deletes at once. If we have sections in here where there's hatch that remains, that means we have an issue and we need to zoom in and figure out what's going on. Now to finish this off, depending on the text that we choose, if we want to fill at the corners, we can. Maybe we want to trim these out so it's a bar that sticks out. You have some design freedom on this one. But to cut it on the laser, we would then move this to a red 255 layer, or change our layer color here. Get that on that screen, there we go. To red 255. Okay, and we would save this, and now this would be ready to cut on the laser.